Awesome. Feel good there?
Yeah,
Okay.
doing good. So how are you today, man?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm just want to get my volume so I can hear you. Doing great. Just ended up with a lot of kind of things to do in the last week or two. Obviously, during shutdown times, a lot of people find time to talk, and uh, ironically, it coincides with the release of a movie that I happen to be in. That we did a few years ago that apparently a lot of people want to talk about right now. So it's very fun.
Oh, that's good. Well, yeah, that's primarily why we're here. Uh, Thank you so much for taking time out to speak with me today.
No problem.
Your The film you are speaking of is your latest movie, Baby Frankenstein.
It
In
is.
the film, you play Lundquist. Um, are Were you related to the gentleman that created the little fellow, or I wasn't unclear, was a little unclear about that?
You mean the character, obviously,
Yes.
not personally related to the guy that created the automaton. Um, yeah, no, what it is, it gets lost a little bit in the storytelling, but you gotta get the tidbits of Easter eggs in the beginning of it. Yeah, there was this big tech company in the 50s that created this kind of prototype automaton type thing that no one knew what it was. It disappeared. Apparently, it's been in this attic of this house for 60 years or so, and the neighborhood kid that moves into the house finds this, and then the hijinks ensue when everybody's trying to get a hold of this kind of 50s tech automaton. And I happen to play a character named Lundquist, who is the now heir apparent of Lundquist Industries, which created this thing back in the 50s or so. So it kind of brings a lot of people think just because of the title that it's a horror genre movie. It has a little of that. It takes place on Halloween. It's a creature feature kind of, but it's really more of a kind of a sci-fi campy romp through the neighborhood. With kind of some interesting characters that whether it's the kid and the girl next door, or the next door neighbor that's interested in the mom, and the mom who's dating this wacko character who ends up being kind of the main bad guy, who wants to capture the baby Frankenstein, and he has got this sidekick that doesn't say a word through the whole movie, but my favorite character in the whole thing, because he's got the greatest facial expressions and the body movements, and he really harkens back to this 1930s, 1920s, 1930s silent movie kind of character. It just works. But the story itself is kind of interesting, and you almost want to be able to see it on a bigger footprint or a bigger scale or a bigger budget type thing. But it was interesting how I came involved in this project, because when you're the kid that happened to be the lead in a movie called The Monster Squad, that ends up having a giant cult following after 30 years, that you end up making a documentary about, that's coming out this year. You get to meet a lot of people, you get to meet a lot of filmmakers, you get to meet a lot of local filmmakers, and you get asked to be in a lot of people's movies, right? That happens all the time. Most of the time it's something that you can't do, or a lot of times it's something you shouldn't do. And but when I and I always handle them respectfully, and sometimes I've done them. But when a friend asks you to be associated with something that you don't know who's making it, you kind of take that phone call or that conversation a little bit differently. And a good friend of mine uh, at the time, TJ Rotel, and his girl Denise Pantoa, was in Northeast Pennsylvania, because that's where he's from, and they were there at the time, and they ran into the filmmaker, who said, "I've got the script, and I've got these guys that want to put together a little budget to make kind of this, kind of little low budget movie." And then apparently my name came up in a conversation, and they asked if my buddy would call me and see if I was interested in doing this. I looked at it and I said, does this help get the movie made? Does it make the movie better? Does it help you and Denise, personally or professionally, to get this done? Then you have that conversation a little bit. You take it a little bit more seriously, and they put it together. And TJ and Denise actually were in charge of the whole production, having to put all of the nuts and bolts together, which is not an easy thing to do, even when you have a budget, so to speak, to work with. But when you're trying to put something together on a really,
Sure.
really small, on a really, really small scale and try to get as best quality as you can, that's really a lot of effort. And honestly, I've said it, a couple times this week, talking about, Baby Frankenstein. I honestly had it, the easiest out of everybody, including the filmmakers and the producers and the production, team led by TJ and Denise, and even including the castmates, because I had, it was supposed to be about a 14 or 15-day shoot originally. And as I was flying to Pennsylvania to shoot this movie, they had to rewrite it and chop it down because of, time and location restrictions and mostly budget, to a 7-day shoot. So I think that, they got all this done in 7 days, which can be done, but that's crazy hard.
Right.
And, I showed up and I know, it was set up, I'm flying in to, do this role. And I had to come from LA. So I've traveled the farthest. And, but, I was looking forward to it to see, kind of what the experience and adventure would be. I got to stay at my friend's parents' house, and his mom made me lunch and dinner, and I got taken to the set and watched all these other people kind of just crash through this kind of awesome camping neighborhood romp. And but it's long days, but you've got to get so much in there, and sometimes you're just sitting there with nothing to do, but because of time and budget constraints, like that's how the production has to be. And so you just wait for your turn, you get in there and you rip it out and you try to get it done right so you can move on to the next thing. And boy, we just kind of flew around, the local towns of like Wilkes-Barre and Scranton and Jessup, Pennsylvania, and Pittston, and way up in the mountains for the final scenes. But like I said, I almost kind of had it easier than anybody because I didn't have to be in every shot. And these cats were going around and just long days, lots of scenes in a one day, shooting a lot of pages, which is always hard, and trying to rip it out. So kudos to them, including the production team and the filmmaker and all the other castmates that really had to put a lot of effort to do in a very, very short amount of time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's awesome. Um, as you were kind of saying, Baby Frankenstein is by no means a grisly horror film. It's more of a film that the entire family can watch together. Did that also help attract you to the movie, even though you knew the filmmakers personally?
Yeah, it did, and not to be correct. I didn't know John, the writer and filmmaker. I didn't know him personally until I got there. I had known my friends TJ and Denise, but then they put us all together, and I landed in town while they're shooting the movie. I met the director on the first day and all the producers, so that was cool. But yeah, the story itself, that's what was interesting because I read the first couple drafts, and like I said, it was actually longer and had some little more exposition and a little more kind of character development of everybody, which every film wants. And then most of that kind of had to get trimmed away, and you just get right into the story, which ended up totally working. But the fact that it wasn't kind of this gory creature feature, or those are fun too. But it is a different audience, and it's a different setup, and it's a different type of production. Yeah, I'm the kid in the Monster Squad. I kind of have the status in the in the horror genre, community, which I love and appreciate. But what really I'm a sci-fi kid too, and sci-fi and robots and automatons and spaceships and tech and all that stuff. And that's what's kind of endearing about the story with the creature in this movie, because it's still technically a creature feature, but it has a little more nostalgic sci-fi bend to it because of when this thing was created, back in just post World War II, 1950s industrial era, that, some company comes up with basically an automaton to help mankind, and then they lose it. And then it's disappeared, for, 60 or 70 years. And I love what I thought was the backstory to all of that. And, I almost kind of I was talking with another interview earlier, and I was like, I want to see the prequel to this now, to see when this thing was created and how they lost it, and go back into a 1950s movie and do it totally, do it black and white, do it B movie style. I think it would be even more fun. So maybe they get to do that. But it drew me because it was more of a neighborhood romp. It was about kids, on an adventure. The two neighborhood kids that find each other they move in on the same day. They're older teenagers, so they're not adolescents. So that's kind of cool. And then they just go on this adventure with this thing that they befriend right away, because why not? Why would they be afraid of this automaton when everybody else is either scared of it or, wants to capture it or shoot it or, capture the reward money? It's only the kids that are going to protect that thing. We've seen that story left and right. And this is just another kind of, take on it. And that's what you kind of connect with, I think. And, you got to love a kid's adventure movie with, either whether it's an alien or a robot or an automaton. This when you actually watch it and some of those older titles and kind of the older influences that you see kind of peeking through, you're like, what was this thing? Why was this built? Is this an Asimov story? Is this a foreboding of tech in the future kind of story? Or, what is this thing? Is it dangerous, or is it actually what's going to save the world? And, you never know. And we don't get that in this story, but we can get it in others maybe, which was kind of cool as an end result, which when we were making it, you don't really have any idea of what it's going to end up being. But I think that's what comes through, in this final cut that gets released. It's got some ET feel, it's got some old 50s sci-fi feel.
Sure.
It's definitely got some 80s kids adventure in the neighborhood, kind of nostalgia feel. And who doesn't like that? That's our eras, right? And
Exactly.
so it comes through. So that's what I really took out of it. And I think, the more and more I talk about it, when people do see it, they'll see more than just the one thing maybe that they thought it would be. Just going into it, they may think it is a Frankenstein movie, and it's this kind of like shorter version of the, basically Frankenstein human being, and it's not. So I think it's a cool little misdirect that people get to go, oh, I was surprised it wasn't what I went in thinking it was going to be, because I thought I had this all figured out.
Exactly.
And you get pleasantly surprised, I think. So, kudos to the end result, I think.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't what I thought it was going to be either. Were you happy with your character in the movie? His motivations, were not, you're not the sinister bad guy trying to kill the creature. You just, you're helpful and you're nice. You just want to get him back.
Right, and really, what you see, a lot of the stuff that got trimmed happened to be my character, or the backstory with
Okay.
with the creation or the technology, or so that backstory a little bit, or my character coming into the mix and meeting these people. All of a sudden, I'm just there and I'm trying to I throw myself in the mix. Yeah, I think it's an interesting character that we don't really get into. But he runs this tech company now. He's the heir apparent to the grandfather that invented this thing and lost it. And like I said, I think that's where an awesome story is. Back 50, 60 years ago. I want to learn more about that. But coming on, I wasn't really sure, because like I said, as I was flying to Pennsylvania to do this movie, they had kind of reworked the entire production and scaled it down a lot more. And so you just had to kind of show up and bounce around and do what you had to be done on the page. And, I you don't want to put into like, well, I was really studying this character, and I'm not that actory guy. I'm not that good. I'm not good enough to say I got into the character the month prior and lived it, as a method actor. I was just trying to show up and be a solid performance for what they were trying to do in this, kind of small, regional local production. But then I got there, and I think the first scene that I was on camera was with Patrick McCartney's character and Giannis' character, of the two bad guys that are, trying to work out the deal to get the reward money. And I was like, okay, so how am I going to play it out? I'm the guy that's in control of the situation. And but then I see this force of nature called Patrick McCartney, who comes in and is this character, Glenovich. And he, as the actor, he just took this guy to, as this character, he just took this thing just, way out of the realm of what you would expect, and just started going off the rails left and right and just being this outrageous guy. And I was sort of like, okay, now how do you play off of that? Because I can't go bigger. I can't be more of a mysterious. So I just like I got to go opposite of what this guy Patrick McCartney was doing in front of me, and just reacting. So I just tried to go as low key and mysterious as possible because I think my character's even trying to portray himself as not what he is, and trying to make it more of like a government Men in Black type thing. But
Right.
he's really just the guy that owns the company that wants his property back. And so that was a little bit of the exposition that was kind of missing, from the final script and the final cut, or the shooting script rather. Um, but I just decided to make it. I was like, I just got to go like low key, stoic, because you had a bunch of other people doing these great roles, like Patrick McCartney just going off the chain, just
Yeah.
going crazy. And so he would ad lib, he would add stuff, he would do comedy stuff. It was just you just got to let someone like that go, because if you try to compete with that, you're going to lose, and then you're also going to make the scene worse. And so I decided to go opposite. And even dealing with everybody, I was just supposed to be this kind of mysterious figure that no one who's is, but ends up being the helper. And even a great role by Mike Rakowski, being the kind of insecure, kind of bumbling, neighbor. And he's one of the producers, and he comes in and he ends up, having some great lines. And then the two kids that were the leads, they weren't really actors. They hadn't done much acting work, and I thought they came across extremely genuine, very authentic.
Sure.
And then even with Eileen, who played the mom, and then my favorite character in the movie is Giannis, who plays the sidekick to Patrick's crazy, Glenovich. I, you know, so I think the only kind of spot that was available was just being that kind of mysterious, dark, low key, just kind of trying to figure out what's going on and get my thing back, without hurting anybody. And everybody else just came across as super authentic and genuine. Um, and it just kind of worked. And knowing the work that all these people put in with not a lot of resources, like I said, and bouncing from location to location, and doing basically a local film. um, at the end result, it's a fun experience. I think everybody came across as genuine and competent, and it just works for the neighborhood feel. And there's some little gems in there, and that's what you got to take away. With a movie like this, you got to be like, that worked out great. I wish that page hadn't gotten cut because that really worked there, but that worked. Or hey, look at and we're talking about all these characters, and we're not even talking about the titular character. We got to talk about Rance Nix, who
Yes.
they find this actor who's willing to go into like 2 to 3 hours of makeup a day to play a character we've never seen before. And what is he? What is he supposed to be? Is he a robot? Is he not a robot? Is he half sentient? Is he half human? What, we don't know. We don't ever get the backstory, and we just let him kind of run free and become. And it doesn't matter. It kind of works in the simplicity of it. But you got to give kudos to someone like Rance, who I had never known before. I meet him on set for I think the first day in makeup. I think I had to wait till like a day or two. I didn't see him and then get up, and that's hard to do. Any kind of makeup effects is always hard because it's not easy, because you are stuck in latex and glue and
Yes.
coloring, and it's very uncomfortable. I've done it. It's not fun. And for people that do it as a profession or get in creature suits and all that, they're the ones that should really have conversations about them more than they get, because you kind of take them for granted. But I think everybody kind of ends up having this neat little effect, and we meet this character that we've never seen before. It's a little misdirect that he's not this kind of literally Frankenstein shorter monster that goes and wreaks havoc in a town. That's not what it is. It ends
Right.
up being, we find the vulnerable kind of, the other, the alien, the whatever it is, and the kids are protecting it and, befriend it. Someone that's goofy and bad is after it. I think they made a great little kind of wannabe criminal duo that will never be successful criminals. And I actually want to see more of those two guys in adventures, as well as I want to see more baby Frankenstein running around. And
Right.
Who knows? It's you never know what happens in the movie world, and but me being a creative and loving to build worlds, especially in the sci-fi angle and things like that, you're like, wow, you could actually like. I want to see a pre-story. I want to learn more about how he's invented. But then, like, there's some adventures that he could go on. He could be an animated character. You could see the comic book of Baby Frankenstein. You could see a story of Glenovich and Van Sneed running around trying to be this criminal enterprise, and they're just these bumbling goofs that never happen. I'm like, that's what I love about you. Never know what to expect coming out of anything because it could be great. It could be great fun.
Exactly. Well, I thought the cast was really great in this film, yourself included, which you don't really expect the level of quality on a film, normally of this particular budget for
Correct.
independent film. So everybody did a much better job than what you normally see in, this kind of film.
Uh, I, I I don't disagree at all. I think you hit it right on the head there. And you just also never know because that's always the unknown quantity in trying to do something like that. It's always the unknown quantity trying to work with kids. I grew up as a
Sure.
kid actor in this business. You're like, oh, this kid had a great audition. What a great bubbly personality. And then 3 months later, when you're shooting the TV show or the movie, the kid gets there and it's like he's never been there before. That's what happens a lot with lower budget, or you have to go local, or you have to go regional because you don't have the budget or the resources to bring, you know, SAG, actors from all over to just, do it. And
Right.
sometimes they're not as good as like the Giannis who plays Van Sneed, who's a local guy who may or may not have done some local theater and comes in and knocks it out of the park the first time he's ever been in front of camera, perhaps, or like the kids like Cora Savage and Ian, who haven't acted that much or if at all, and they came across as just as genuine and authentic as someone that had done it 10 times or 100 times. And I think that's what actually adds a little bit to this particular kind of film. And especially if you know the backstory of it, of how much and little time that they had to work on it, because that's really hard to do, actually. And like I said, I of all the people that are on camera in this movie, I probably had it the easiest because yeah, we had long days and you had to sit around because it wasn't your turn, but there's nowhere for you to go, so you just got to be there. And so you try to help out where you can. It's and all these people had to fly through a bunch of pages of dialogue a day and move cameras, and they got a crew of a production crew out of the New York area that had gear and equipment, and you got to kind of cobble together something that someone's going to be with you for a week of time and long hours, and hopefully get some enthusiasm out of even the crew and the production aspect of it. And when it comes to actors, it's even more kind of experimental or more gambling because you're like, oh, we don't have any resources to bring people in or put it in. We'd love to have you know you know Tom Cruise or Ryan Gosling in everybody's movie, of course, but that's not going to happen to 99.999% of the movies. And so you've got to find a way to make it work. And sometimes it's a throw of the dice, and sometimes it's some great local people or regional, and you just get lucky. And honestly, I think John and the producers and my pals TJ and Denise that put the production together, who did all of the ox cart work of a small production. You did big time work on a small time production, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And a lot of problem solving, a lot of putting out fires, a lot of oh, this didn't work out. Now what do we do? So you got to figure it out in an hour or less because you don't have the time to mess around. And these people did a good job with not a lot of time and or resources to do it. And but I think the genuineness of having local and regional actors bounce off someone like Patrick McCarthy, who has worked prior.
Mhm.
He has a resume and has worked and has been out there and is not shy and is not scared of being in front of the camera. Which some people, that's always a gamble too. But then he just becomes this kind of tour de force. And every time the cameras are rolling, because he just steals all the oxygen out of the room, and it totally works. Is it over the top? Absolutely. But for this, it ends up kind of working because that's that character. And then play it off with the authenticity and the genuineness of everybody else that brings it in there because they're just being everyday neighborhood human beings trying to read dialogue that someone else wrote. and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I think all these people, all of these casts in this ended up coming across great and not trying to force it, not trying to do what they can't or shouldn't do. And so even dialing it back on their aspect of it to just be as easy breezy and normal as you would think it would be, it actually works for this. And you always try not to overdo something or overact or do something really lame. Or, and I find myself falling in because you're like, what? I used to overact all the time as a kid and move too big, and then you learn a little bit more. You kind of try to bring it all down a little bit, and but for less experienced or inexperienced actors, they don't know what they don't know, but I think that's what makes it great.
Yeah.
Someone that has experience, like, oh, what is this person going to do with this, and just let him go or whatever. But it totally worked with Patrick's role. Hopefully it worked with my role. There wasn't I just trying to play this mysterious guy that's trying to get his thing back, and then realized that maybe the best place is not where you think. So I'll let you all watch the movie and then watch the story, how it unfolds. So it's a nice, tight, short movie, which is always a good thing. There's not a lot of extra anything, which can drown a movie sometimes.
For sure. Yes, definitely. Well, Andre, we're running a little short on time, but I have to ask you at least one question about the Monster Squad.
Sure. No problem.
I know you get these all the time, but what is your fondest memory from working on that beloved film, The Monster Squad?
There was a lot of work for 3.5 months being on that set every day. I think the fondest single memory was obviously the biggest thing was shooting that last week, which is the final action sequence, because there was so much going on. And it was basically, 3 movies all in one scene. You're doing a monster movie, you're doing a supernatural movie, you're doing a special effects movie, and there's wind machines, and wolves are blowing up in midair, and Gilman's getting blown away, and Dracula's killing 10 sheriffs, and you're getting sucked into a vortex. So that was probably the most memorable aspect of it, but really kind of just the whole thing of trying to put together this movie, working with a bunch of kids, and and meeting and working with guys like Fred Decker and Shane Black, who are still lifelong friends, and able to reach out to and chat with or get together with. And then lifelong relationships with people like Ashley Bank and Ryan Lambert, who, back in 2006, we've, reconnected again after, probably a decade of not really seeing each other for a while. And then to be part of the resurgence, really the resurgence of the Monster Squad is really the kind of the latest conversation topic that blows your mind. But what we get to do is we get to revisit all of those memories while we meet these awesome fans that have kept that movie alive for 30 something years now. And we get to live that together, like Ashley and Ryan and myself, and we've been all over the place, traveling around and meeting fans, and getting to reconnect, with the movie itself, learning a little bit more about yourself and how that movie affected you, and that's really what kind of spurned really what became the documentary that I made, Wolfman's Got Nards, that was really diving into really what the fans' story was. It's not about the making of the Monster Squad. We covered that a little bit. It's not about where are they now. We covered a little of that. It's really about the story of a relationship between a movie and its fans, and a relationship story about the fans and a movie that they connected to for some reason when they first saw it. Because Monster Squad fans are really connected to the Monster Squad. Yeah. And it was new in 06, 07 when this was starting to percolate and grow. And then we thought it would end after about a year or two, honestly. But Michael, let me tell you, not only did that not peter out, it has just continued to grow. And so the foundation of the fan base has grown. The trajectory is just slowly going up constantly, because now we have a whole second generation of Monster Squad fans, which is insane. And they love it and get just connected to it as their parents did, or their aunt and uncle that showed it to them, or their older brother and sister. And it was those stories that people would come up to us and to myself personally and share with you of how this movie impacted them, how it changed their life, or how they connected to one or more of the characters and how it influenced how they do. And I thought those stories were fascinating, and so I really realized that those stories were a story, and how could I tell that story? And I didn't want to make the doc about myself. I didn't want to make it about me and Ryan or Ashley or Fred or Shane. But we're all part of it, so we're part of that story. But really, anybody that's on camera in this documentary is talking about how this movie impacted them, whether they were a fan that grew up in North Carolina and saw it, in their, on HBO, and then went in their backyard and showed it to their friends in their treehouse, or whether it was two of the main actors in the movie and how that movie impacted and influenced the rest of their life, being a part of it. And so that was really what it is. It's not, and it's not, like I said, it's not a making of doc. We covered that. It's not a where are they now type thing. We do a little of that. And it's not a fan service doc. Honestly, it's not really a fan doc. That we've seen at about a bunch of nostalgic titles, whether from the 60s, 70s, or 80s. And now we're getting a nostalgia of the 90s. That means we're all getting really, really much older here for having nostalgia stuff that anything had a 90s in it. But because some of those movies are great, some of them are bad. It's just about fan service and like, ooh, look at this. Here's something you've never seen, and talk about this. Those don't work for me as much as I wanted to turn the focus around on the fans, who are the main reason that this movie stayed alive for 30 years when it bombed in the box office, and was rightly so, was technically dead for 19 years. And then it got Frankenstein, or it got resurrected in some way, and the flip got switched, and the internet helped. The fan base was there. They connected together over, MySpace and Facebook and the internet and the fan sites, and, the precursors of, shows and interviews of, like what you do. And at the very beginning, and they all had a common place to go meet each other and connect. And that's what created this resurgence. And that's the story I wanted to tell.
Well, I'm really looking forward to seeing that documentary. We're out of time now, so I want to thank you so much for speaking with me. Baby Frankenstein is available now on DVD and all the digital on-demand platforms. Monster Squad, that's a movie that will live in my heart forever. And, I've always loved it. You do such a great job in it. And I'm so honored to be able to speak with you today.
Well, Michael, I thank you for, thanks for having me. It's always good to hear that. I love being able to talk about Monster Squad with people that really enjoy it. I don't get tired of it. I also love being able to talk about something new like Baby Frankenstein,
Sure.
And especially about something like Wolfman's Got Nards, which let's stay in touch, because we are honestly days away from finalizing a release for it, and getting that out to the world. So what we get to do is you'll get to see that, and then you and I can reconnect and talk about something completely different and get to hang out one more time.
Sounds great.
Maybe that'll be the second time of 10. But I noticed you're wearing your Famous Monsters of Film Man t-shirt there.
Yes.
Talk about a great memory. I'll leave with this, since I saw it in your webcam, about Monster Squad, is one day on set, this older gentleman was just hanging around, and people were talking to him, and they ended up meeting him and learning who he was, and it happened to be Forrest Ackerman. And so he was on our set, and I have a great photo of Forrest Ackerman and Fred Decker and myself on the set of Monster Squad. And I show that to a lot of, genre buffs, and they lose their mind when, especially I show it to them if someone's wearing the t-shirt. I was like, oh, by the way, there's a photo of me and your guy. But I think it's publications like that really rooted, the kids that are genre fans and stuck with them. And that's why it's a community, that grew into what it is. And I don't think no one leaves that community. They're all part of it, and everybody's welcome.
Yes, definitely. Well, I could talk Monster Squad with you all day, but that's for another time.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Andre,
we'll talk Monster Squad. We'll talk Wolfman's Got Nards, and anything else you want to throw in there. We'll set another time. I'd love to come back on.
Definitely. Well, you have a a good rest of your day. Congratulations on Baby Frankenstein. Looking forward to see Wolfman Got Nards. And talk later.
All right, Mike. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Take care.
All right.